The interview room was cold and gray, like everything else on Refuge 7 space station. Velther sat in a special chair designed for Kishari bodies, his remaining 2 arms resting on the metal table. The other 2 arms were gone. Lost 15 years ago on a battlefield, he still saw every time he closed his eyes. Across from him, the Galactic Historical Commission representative waited with recording devices humming softly. The representative was a Mathari, a species known for careful documentation. They had asked Velther to come here 3 times before he finally agreed. "Please begin whenever you're ready," the representative said gently. Velther's throat felt dry. Where did one start when describing hell? He decided to start at the beginning, before he understood what humans truly were. "I met them on Station Outpost 12, Velther began. "The Coalition had just accepted Earth into the Alliance. We needed soldiers. The swarm was pushing through the outer colonies, and we were losing badly. When the humans arrived, I thought Command had made a terrible mistake." He remembered that day clearly. The human transport ships docked, and out came these strange bipedal creatures. They stood upright on only 2 legs, had only 2 arms, and their skin came in different shades of brown and pink. They looked fragile. Velther was 3 times the size of the biggest human, and he was considered small for a Kishari. "I was assigned as a liaison officer to their unit," Velther continued. "The first human I spoke to was Corporal Taesung." He smiled at me. I did not understand this expression then. Among my people, showing teeth is a threat. But Taesung was not threatening me. He was trying to be friendly. The corporal had extended his hand, another strange human gesture. Velther had stared at it, confused, until another human, Private Hana, explained it was called a handshake. Velther had carefully gripped the tiny hand with one of his large claws, afraid he might break it. "Your weapons are impressive," Taesung had said, looking at Velther's plasma rifle. "We call ours Betty. This is Betty." He patted his own rifle like it was a pet. Velther had been shocked. "You name your weapons?" Hana laughed. "We name everything. Our ships, our guns, our tanks." Taesung even named his helmet. "It brings good luck," Taesung said seriously. Velther thought they were insane. Professional soldiers did not name equipment. Equipment was equipment, nothing more. But he said nothing. The humans were new, and perhaps they would learn proper military discipline. The first real battle came 3 days later. The swarm attacked a mining colony on the 4th moon of Rexus Prime. The Coalition scrambled every available unit, including the new human forces. Velther went with them, still acting as liaison, still thinking these small creatures would break and run when real violence started. He was wrong. The swarm came in waves. Thousands of bioengineered killers designed only to destroy. They had claws like razors and acid that could melt through armor. The Coalition forces took defensive positions and fired in controlled patterns, as doctrine required. The humans did the same at first. Then, Private Hana went down, hit by acid spray. She screamed as it ate through her leg armor. The nearest soldier was Jinho, a human medic who had barely spoken since arrival. What happened next made no sense to Velther. Jinho did not wait for the covering fire. He did not call for support. He simply ran directly into the plasma fire, grabbed Hana, and dragged her back to cover. Acid splashed on his arm. Energy bolts burned the ground around his feet. A swarm warrior slashed at him, tearing his shoulder armor. Jinho did not stop moving. He pulled Hana behind a barrier, jammed a medical injector into her leg, and started treating the acid burns while plasma bolts screamed overhead. His own shoulder was bleeding badly, but his hands did not shake as he worked. "Medic!" Velther had shouted. "You are injured. Fall back." Jinho looked up at him with strange, calm eyes. "She needs help more than I do." It made no tactical sense. A wounded medic was less effective than a healthy one. Jinho should have retreated for treatment, and another medic should have helped Hana. But Jinho stayed, working until Hana was stabilized. Only then did he let someone treat his shoulder. After the battle, Velther approached Corporal Taesung. "Your medic is either very brave or very foolish." Taesung shrugged. "Jinho is just Jinho. He does not leave people behind. None of us do, even if it means your death." Velther asked. "Especially then," Taesung said simply. Velther did not understand. His species valued survival above all else. A dead soldier could not fight again. Throwing away your life for one wounded soldier was mathematically inefficient. But humans operated on different mathematics. He was beginning to realize. That night, Velther heard the humans singing in their barracks. Strange melodies from their distant planet Earth. Songs about home, about people they loved, about things worth protecting. Hana was singing too, her leg bandaged but her spirit unbroken. Jinho sat beside her, his shoulder wrapped, looking tired but content. Velther had fought in 17 battles before meeting humans. He thought he understood war. He thought he knew what soldiers looked like, how they behaved, what drove them. He was wrong about all of it. The humans were not like any soldiers he had ever seen. They were reckless and careful at the same time. They joked in the face of death, but became deadly serious when a friend was threatened. They named their weapons like pets, but used them with cold efficiency. They should have been easy to predict, but they were not. Sitting in the cold interview room 15 years later, Velther realized that first day was when his whole understanding of warfare began to crumble. The humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. That was just the beginning, Velther told the representative. "I did not know it then, but I was about to see things that would haunt me forever." The humans were about to show the galaxy what they truly were. The representative leaned forward. "Please continue." Velther took a breath and prepared to describe the fire planet. Krell 9 was a nightmare planet. Velther had seen the reports before the mission briefing, and each detail was worse than the last. The planet orbited too close to its star. Surface temperatures reached 400 degrees Celsius during the day. The atmosphere was thick with sulfur compounds that corroded standard armor within hours. The swarm had built a massive fortress there, deep in volcanic rock, using the hostile environment as its primary defense. Coalition Command called it unassaultable. Every simulation showed catastrophic losses. Most species in the Coalition could not survive on the surface for more than a few minutes, even in protective gear. The generals recommended a long-range orbital bombardment campaign that would take months or even years. Lieutenant Day 1 raised his hand during the briefing. "My unit volunteers." The room went silent. The Kishari general stared at the human officer. "You understand the conditions on Krell 9? "Yes, sir," Day 1 replied calmly. 400 degrees, sulfur atmosphere, volcanic activity. "We trained in Death Valley back on Earth. This is not much different, just hotter." Velther wanted to laugh, but the human was serious. Death Valley was apparently a desert on Earth, where humans voluntarily went for recreation. These creatures were insane. "You will die down there," the general said bluntly. "We will take the fortress," everyone answered. The general approved the mission. Velther was assigned once again as liaison. He had requested a different assignment, but his commander told him the humans trusted him now. They had fought together. That apparently mattered to humans. The dropships descended through Krell 9's thick atmosphere. The temperature gauges climbed steadily. Velther's armor cooling system was already running at maximum capacity, and they had not even landed yet. Around him, the human soldiers sat calmly, checking their weapons and equipment. Sergeant Myong was eating something from a small package. "Want some chocolate?" she offered to Velther. "It is melting, but still good." "How can you eat at a time like this?" Velthor asked. Miang grinned. "Always eat when you can. You never know when the next meal comes." They landed in what passed for a cool zone on Krell-9, a shaded valley where the temperature was only 300 degrees. Velthor stepped out of the dropship and felt his armor systems scream warnings. His visor immediately began to fog. The heat was crushing, like being pressed against a furnace. The humans deployed smoothly. They had modified their armor with additional cooling systems built from spare parts and scavenged equipment. Velthor watched in amazement as they jury-rigged solutions that should not work but somehow did. A human engineer named Kyungho had attached extra coolant tanks to his back, connected with tubes he had made from medical supplies. "Will that work?" Velthor asked. Kyungho shrugged. "It works, or I cook. We find out soon." The march to the fortress began. Doctrine said they should move in short bursts, taking frequent breaks to let armor systems cool down. The humans ignored Doctrine. They marched continuously, adjusting their pace to stay just below the point where their systems would fail. And they sang. Velthor could not believe it. They were walking through hell itself, and they were singing old Earth songs about mountains and rivers and homes they might never see again. The singing seemed to give them strength, seemed to make the heat less oppressive. "Why do you sing?" Velthor asked Sergeant Miang during a brief water break. "It helps," she said simply. "It reminds us we are alive. It reminds us we are together." The fortress was built into the side of a volcano. Swarm warriors poured out to meet them, adapted for the extreme heat. The battle began in that terrible landscape of fire and stone. Velthor fought alongside the humans for 30 continuous hours. There was no day or night on Krell-9, just endless burning sunlight. The humans did not stop. They advanced meter by meter, clearing fortified positions, pushing through choke points that should have been impossible to breach. Velthor saw Kyungho carry a wounded Kishari soldier named Rethkor for 3 kilometers back to the medical station. Rethkor was twice Kyungho's size and weight. The human's cooling system was failing. Alarms were sounding in his helmet. But he walked steadily, step after step, refusing to leave the alien behind. "Put me down," Rethkor begged. "Save yourself." "Not happening," Kyungho said through gritted teeth. "We all go home or none of us do." Velthor helped carry Rethkor for the last kilometer. When they reached the medical station, Kyungho collapsed from heat exhaustion. The medics rushed to cool him down. His body temperature was dangerous, his organs stressed to the breaking point. But Rethkor was alive. The fortress fell on the 4th day. Coalition estimates had predicted 6 months minimum if the attack was even possible. The humans did it in 4 days of continuous combat in conditions that should have killed them all. Velthor stood in the ruins of the swarm fortress, his armor barely functional, his body exhausted beyond anything he had experienced before. Around him, the humans were already setting up defensive positions, preparing for potential counterattacks. They looked tired but unbroken. Lieutenant Day 1 approached Velthor. "You fought well." "I survived," Velthor corrected. "You fought well. I do not understand how you did this." Day 1 looked down at the volcanic landscape. "We decided the fortress would fall. So it fell. The heat, the conditions, the enemy, they were all just problems to solve. We solve problems." It was such a simple statement, but it revealed something profound about humans. They did not accept limitations the way other species did. When faced with an impossible situation, they did not calculate odds or consider retreat. They simply decided what outcome they wanted and then forced reality to comply. Velthor had always believed that soldiers fought despite pain and hardship. But humans were different. They seemed to take the pain personally. They turned suffering into fuel for their determination. The worse conditions became, the more stubborn they grew. When the transport ships came to evacuate them from Krell 9, Velther looked at the human soldiers filing aboard. Many were injured. All were exhausted. Their armor was damaged, their supplies nearly depleted. But they were singing again, celebrating their victory. Sergeant Miong sat down next to Velther on the transport. "You look like you have seen a ghost." "I have seen something I did not think possible," Velther replied. "I have seen soldiers turn spite into a weapon." Miong laughed, a sound like music in the rumble of the transport engines. "Spite is humanity's secret advantage. We are too stubborn to quit, too angry at the universe to accept defeat. Someone tells us something is impossible, and we take that as a personal challenge." The transport lifted off from the nightmare surface of Krell 9. Velther watched the planet shrink in the viewport. He had survived something that should have killed him. He had done it alongside creatures that refused to acknowledge the word impossible. The war was far from over. More battles waited. More horrors would come. But Velther now understood something crucial about his human allies. They did not fight like they were trying to win. They fought like losing was not an option they would ever accept. And that made them the most dangerous soldiers in the galaxy. The Terminus Nebula was beautiful and deadly. Velther had served on the Coalition battleship Eternal Dawn for 3 months when the ambush happened. The nebula's colorful gases looked peaceful from a distance, but they hid sensor readings and provided perfect cover for enemy ships. The swarm fleet hit them without warning. 30 enemy vessels appeared from the nebula clouds, weapons already firing. The Eternal Dawn shook as plasma torpedoes struck the hull. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Velther grabbed a support beam as the deck tilted under his feet. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, the tactical officer reported. "Engineering section is venting atmosphere." Velther felt his blood run cold. Engineering was the heart of the ship. Without it, they were dead in space. The crew in that section had maybe seconds before the vacuum killed them. He made his way toward engineering, following emergency protocols. The corridor was filled with smoke and flashing red lights. Other crew members rushed past, heading to their emergency stations. Then he heard something that made him stop. A human voice on the communication system. Engineering team Bora and Junho responding. "We are still alive. Beginning emergency repairs." Velther accessed the engineering section cameras. What he saw was impossible. The entire section was open to space. The hull had been torn apart by the torpedo strikes. Bodies of the Kishari engineering crew floated in the vacuum, killed instantly when the atmosphere vented. But 2 humans were still moving. Bora and Junho, both wearing spacesuits, were working in the exposed section. They moved carefully through the debris field, heading toward the damaged power conduits. "Bora, Junho, evacuate immediately," the captain ordered. "That section is lost." "Negative, Captain," Bora replied calmly. "We can reroute power from here. The ship needs engines or we all die anyway." "Your suits will not last long enough," the captain said. "Then we better work fast," Junho said. Velther watched them work. The camera feed was grainy, damaged by the explosions, but he could see enough. The 2 humans were completely exposed to space, surrounded by the debris of destroyed bulkheads and shattered equipment. Enemy ships continued firing at the Eternal Dawn. More impacts shook the vessel. Bora and Junho worked with steady hands. They pulled apart damaged conduits, rerouted power lines, and bypassed destroyed systems. Their movements were calm and efficient, as if they were in a training simulation instead of hard vacuum with enemy fire all around. Velther pulled up their suit telemetry on a nearby console. The numbers were terrifying. Their oxygen levels were dropping steadily. Their suit temperatures were falling as the life support system struggled against the cold of space. Junho's left glove had a small tear that was getting bigger. Bora's suit heating system was failing. "How are you holding up?" The captain asked over the communication channel. My fingers are getting cold, Bora said. Cannot feel my toes anymore. But we are almost done. I have a leak in my glove, Junho reported. It is small. I have maybe 10 minutes before it becomes a problem. Velthor listened to them talk and felt something like awe mixed with horror. They were dying slowly, freezing in the void, and they spoke about it like discussing the weather. Their voices remained steady. They did not panic. They just kept working. Time crawled forward. Minutes felt like hours. Velthor could not look away from the camera feed. He watched Bora's hands shake from the cold as she connected the final power coupling. He watched Junho brace himself against a broken beam when another impact rocked the ship, his damaged glove leaking more air. Power reroute complete, Bora said finally. Engines should have power now. The bridge erupted in activity. The tactical officer confirmed engine power was restored. The Eternal Dawn began to move again, maneuvering away from the worst of the enemy fire. Get back inside now, the captain ordered. Emergency airlock on Deck 8 is still functional. On our way, Junho said. Velthor moved to Deck 8, arriving just as the airlock cycled. Bora and Junho stumbled inside as the door sealed. Medical teams rushed forward. When they removed the suits, Velthor saw the damage. Both humans had severe frostbite. Bora's fingers were blue, her toes worse. Junho's hand was swollen where the suit had leaked, the flesh damaged by vacuum exposure. They were shaking violently from the cold, their core temperatures dangerously low. You saved the ship, Velthor said. Bora tried to smile through chattering teeth. Just doing our job. They had been in vacuum for 14 hours. 14 hours of slowly freezing, slowly suffocating, knowing that every minute could be their last. And they had joked. Velthor had listened to their communications during the entire ordeal. Bora had sung old Earth songs to stay conscious. Junho had made bad jokes about his frozen fingers. The medical teams took them away. Velthor learned later that both would recover, though Bora lost 2 toes and Junho would have scars on his hand forever. Small prices for saving 3,000 crew members. The battle ended with a coalition victory. The Eternal Dawn survived thanks to the restored engines. Captain Wonshik addressed the crew afterward, commending everyone who fought. He specifically mentioned Bora and Ju Nho. When the wounded were treated. Captain Wonshik insisted the alien wounded go first. He had taken shrapnel in his leg during the battle but refused priority treatment. Others are hurt worse, he said simply, limping to the back of the medical line. Velthor found him there, waiting patiently while medics treated a Kishari crew member with burns. Captain, you should be treated immediately. Wonshik shook his head. I can wait. The leg is not going anywhere. Why do humans do this? Velthor asked. Why you risk everything, endure such suffering, for a ship that is not even from your world? Most of this crew is not human. Wonshik looked at him with tired eyes. When you are part of a crew, when you fight together, species does not matter. You are all family. You do not leave family behind. You do not let family die if you can prevent it. Family. The humans use that word often. They applied it broadly to people they had known for only weeks or months. For them, shared danger created bonds as strong as blood. Velthor thought about Bora and Junho working in the vacuum. He thought about their steady voices, their terrible jokes, their refusal to give up even as their bodies slowly failed. He thought about Wonshik standing in the medical line with shrapnel in his leg, insisting others go first. The humans treated death like a personal insult. When the universe tried to kill them, they took it as a challenge. When death came for their friends, they stepped between death and their loved ones and said, "No, not today. Not ever. Not while we still breathe." The Eternal Dawn limped to the nearest repair station. The crew was battered but alive. In his quarters, Velther wrote a report about what he had witnessed. His hands shook as he typed. He tried to describe what he had seen, but words felt inadequate. How did you explain courage that bordered on madness? How did you describe people who stared at death and laughed? How did you make others understand soldiers who would freeze in the void for 14 hours to save a ship full of aliens? You could not. You could only witness it and be forever changed. Velther finished his report and sat in the darkness. Outside his window, the Terminus Nebula glowed with beautiful colors. Somewhere in those clouds, wreckage from the battle drifted silently. But the eternal dawn survived, and 3,000 souls still lived, because 2 humans decided dying was not acceptable. Not today. Haven Colony was supposed to be safe. The settlement housed 40,000 refugees, mostly families who had fled from swarm-occupied worlds. They were civilians, not soldiers. Old people, children, parents trying to protect their young. The Coalition had established Haven on a moon far behind the front lines, protected by defense satellites and patrol fleets. The protection failed. Velther arrived 3 hours after the massacre ended. His transport ship descended through smoke that rose from burning buildings. The scene below was worse than any battlefield he had witnessed. Bodies lay everywhere. The Swarm War Crimes unit had not just killed, they had butchered. No one was spared. Not the elderly. Not the children. He stepped off the transport and immediately vomited. The smell was overwhelming. Death and fire mixed with something worse, the particular horror of murdered innocents. Around him, Coalition soldiers stood in shock, unable to process what they were seeing. Velther saw a Kishari child, maybe 5 years old by human reckoning, lying near a destroyed playground. He had to look away. His hands started shaking and would not stop. Major Haiyan Wu's regiment had been stationed 2 systems away when the distress call came. They arrived too late to save anyone. The human soldiers moved through the ruins with terrible silence. They did not speak. They simply documented everything, their faces frozen in expressions Velther had never seen before. Coalition Command sent orders within the hour. Strategic withdrawal. Regroup at Rally Point Sigma. The War Crimes Unit is heading toward fortified positions. We cannot pursue through that territory without massive casualties. Velther delivered the orders to Major Haiyan Wu personally. The human officer read them twice, then looked up at Velther with eyes that seemed empty of everything except cold fury. No, Haiyan Wu said. Major, these are direct orders from Coalition Command, Velther said, carefully. I understand. And my answer is no. We are not withdrawing. Master Sergeant Soman stood nearby, her rifle held loosely in her hands. She had been crying. Velther could see the tracks on her dusty face. But her voice was steady when she spoke. They killed children, sir, Soman said to Velther, using the respectful term despite him being a liaison, not her commander. We do not retreat from that. We do not ever retreat from that. Velther tried to reason with them. I understand your anger. We all feel it. But the tactical situation makes pursuit impossible. The enemy is heading into heavily fortified territory. You will lose half your regiment trying to reach them. Then we lose half the regiment, Haiyan Wu said flatly. Give me a communications channel to Coalition Command. Velther watched as the major spoke directly to the Coalition generals. The conversation was brief and one-sided. Haiyan Wu did not argue or debate. He simply stated facts. The unit responsible for Haven Colony is moving north. My regiment is pursuing. If you order us to stop, we will resign our commissions and pursue anyway as civilian volunteers. Recommend you mark us as Mia instead. Easier paperwork. The generals tried to argue. Haiyan Wu cut the communication. The regiment moved out within the hour. No speeches, no war cries, no motivation needed. Every human soldier had seen Haven Colony. They knew what they were pursuing and why. Velther went with them. He could not explain why. Perhaps he felt responsible for delivering the withdrawal order. Perhaps he needed to see what would happen next. Perhaps he was just too shocked to make rational decisions. The pursuit lasted 11 days. Velther had fought in many battles. But this was different. The humans did not fight like soldiers anymore. They fought like something else entirely. They were silent, methodical, terrifying in their efficiency. No war cries. No anger. No rage. Just cold, surgical elimination of the enemy. They tracked the war crimes, unit through territory that should have been impossible to navigate. When enemy forces tried to slow them down, the humans went through them like they were not there. Velther watched Private Isile, a 19-year-old girl who looked like she should be in school, track an enemy commander for 48 hours without rest. She moved through hostile territory alone, eating while she walked, sleeping in 20-minute intervals, never losing the trail. When she finally caught her target, she did not hesitate. One shot, clean, efficient. Then she moved to the next target. The humans coordinated without speaking much. They seemed to share an understanding, a common purpose that needed no words. Sergeant Soman led her squad through a fortified position that intelligence said required at least a company to assault. Her squad was 12 soldiers. They went in silently at night, and the position stopped broadcasting by dawn. Velther tried to help, tried to fight alongside them, but he felt like he was witnessing something beyond his understanding. The humans had transformed. They moved with terrible purpose. Every action served the single goal of catching the war crimes unit. On the 8th day, they caught up. The enemy had fortified a valley, thinking themselves safe behind defensive positions and minefields. Major Han Wu studied the position for 6 hours, then gave simple orders. No prisoners. The assault began at midnight. Velther was positioned with the command group, watching through tactical displays. The humans went through the defenses like water flowing around rocks. Where resistance was strong, they flowed around it. Where gaps appeared, they poured through. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the enemy war crimes unit ceased to exist. Every single member was dead. The humans took no prisoners, just as the major had ordered. Velther walked through the aftermath as dawn broke over the valley. Bodies of swarm warriors lay everywhere. The humans were already preparing to move out, showing no interest in celebrating their victory. This was not victory to them. This was justice. He found Master Sergeant Selman sitting on a rock, cleaning her rifle. She looked exhausted, but her hands were steady. 40,000, she said quietly. We counted the bodies in Haven. 40,000 civilians. Children. Families. They killed them all. And now you have killed all of them. Velther said. Someone looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Yes, and it does not bring back a single child. It does not undo what happened. But they will never do it again. And maybe the next swarm commander will think twice before attacking civilians. Private Isiel walked past, her young face aged by what she had done. She had personally killed 17 enemy soldiers during the campaign, tracking them one by one. She did not look proud or ashamed. She looked empty, hollowed out by necessary violence. Velther understood something then that would stay with him forever. Humans were capable of infinite compassion. He had seen them risk everything to save wounded aliens, and watched them endure terrible conditions to protect their crews, and witnessed them treat strangers like family. But that same compassion made them capable of terrible cruelty when it was violated. The humans loved fiercely, and when what they loved was destroyed, they became something dark and unstoppable. They did not kill from hatred. They killed from love. Love for the innocent. Love for children they would never meet. Love for the idea that some things were worth protecting, even at the cost of your own humanity. Major Hyun Woo gathered the regiment. Coalition Command has ordered us back to base. They are not happy with us, but they are not court-martialing us either. The official record will say we were delayed by difficult terrain. The humans nodded, accepting the fiction. They would carry what they had done in silence, would bear the weight of necessary violence without complaint as they marched back toward friendly territory. Velther walked beside Sergeant Soman. I tried to stop you. I thought you were making a mistake. You were following orders, Soman said. No shame in that. I was wrong, though. You had to do this. Soman was quiet for a moment. We did not have to. We chose to. There's a difference. We could have followed orders and lived with ourselves. But those children deserve justice. Sometimes you have to choose between following rules and doing right. We chose right. Velther understood now. Humanity's compassion and cruelty came from the same source. Their capacity for love created their capacity for vengeance. They would die for strangers and kill for innocents. Both impulses came from the same deep well of caring that would not accept evil. The War Crimes Unit was gone. Haven Colony was still destroyed. Nothing changed, and everything changed. The message was sent across the galaxy in human blood and enemy bodies. Touch the innocent, and humanity will follow you to the end of the universe. They will not stop. They will not forgive. They will find you, and they will end you. Not from hate, from love. The interview room on Refuge 7 felt smaller now, closing in around Velther as he reached the end of his testimony. The Galactic Historical Commission representative had not interrupted once during the hours of speaking. They simply listened and recorded, letting Velther tell the story that had lived in his nightmares for 15 years. The final battle, Velther said, his voice rough from talking. You want to know about the final battle? The representative nodded silently. Velther's remaining hands trembled. This was the part he had avoided telling, even to himself, for all these years. The part where he lost his arms. The part where everything ended and somehow continued. The swarm made their last stand at the Korthax Gate, a massive space station that controlled access to 3 different star systems. If we took it, we cut off their supply lines and the war would effectively be over. If we failed, the war would drag on for years, maybe decades. Coalition Command had assembled the largest fleet ever gathered. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, representing every species in the Alliance. The humans were there, of course. They were always there, at every crucial battle, every desperate stand. Commander Minho led the human assault forces. Velther had known him for 2 years by then, had fought beside him on a dozen worlds. Minho was quiet compared to other human officers. Thoughtful, always planning 3 moves ahead. But when battle came, he was unstoppable. The swarm knew we were coming, Velther continued. They fortified every corridor, every junction, every room. The station was a maze designed to bleed attackers dry. Our initial assault waves suffered 70% casualties in the first hour. The coalition generals considered withdrawing. The cost was too high. But Commander Minho requested permission to try a different approach. He would take a small force through the maintenance tunnels, bypass the main defenses, and strike at the station's central power core. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of plan humans excelled at. Velther volunteered to go with them. By that point, he could not imagine fighting without humans beside him. They had become his family, just as they had claimed all those years ago on Outpost-12. The team was small. 15 humans and Velther. They entered the maintenance tunnels through a breach in the station's outer hull. The tunnels were narrow, dark, filled with pipes and cables that made movement difficult. We crawled for 6 hours, Velther said. the memory sharp despite the years. The tunnels were too small for proper combat. If we encountered enemies, we would be trapped. But we did not encounter anyone. The swarm had not expected us to use that route. They emerged in a service corridor 3 levels above the power core. The alarms had not been triggered yet. They had complete surprise. For exactly 40 seconds. Then Sergeant Yuna's squad was spotted by a patrol. The alarm went off. Every swarm warrior on that level converged on their position. We were surrounded, Velther said. Enemies ahead and behind, more coming from side corridors. Commander Minho calculated our odds. With defensive positions, we might hold for 10 minutes before being overrun. Not enough time to complete the mission. Standard military doctrine said to retreat, to preserve forces for another attempt. Commander Minho looked at his soldiers. They looked back at him. No words were needed. Sergeant Yuna spoke first. Forward. The humans charged. Not away from the enemy, but directly into them. They used the momentum of surprise, the shock of an attack when defense was expected. Velther charged with them, his 4 arms wielding weapons, his body moving on instinct, trained by years of fighting alongside humans. The corridor became chaos. Plasma fire and energy blades, explosions and screaming, the terrible sound of soldiers fighting for their lives. The humans pushed forward meter by meter, paying in blood for every step. Velther saw Private Dong Min take a plasma bolt meant for him. The young human went down hard, his armor smoking. Without thinking, Velther grabbed him and started pulling him toward cover. An enemy warrior attacked from the side. Velther blocked with his upper left arm. The energy blade severed it cleanly. The pain was incredible, but Velther did not stop moving. He kept dragging Dong Min with his remaining 3 arms. Another attack. Another block. His upper right arm gone now, the stumps cauterized by the heat of the blade. He got Dong Min to cover. A human medic was already there, treating casualties. The medic looked at Velther's injuries with wide eyes. You saved him, the medic said. Velther was shaking from shock and pain. He saved me first. On Krell 9, I owed him. That was a lie and a truth together. Dong Min had never saved Velther's life on Krell 9, but some other human had. And in the way humans thought about family and bonds, that meant Velther owed all of them. Just as they would protect any member of their extended family. Commander Minho reached the power core with 5 soldiers. They had lost 10 along the way. The survivors were all wounded, but they planted the charges and set the timers. The explosion would destroy the power core and cripple the station, Velther said. But we had to get out first. The timer was set for 10 minutes. We were 15 minutes from the nearest exit, even at a full run. They ran anyway. The corridors were still full of enemy warriors. The humans fought through them with desperate speed, not stopping to engage, just pushing through. Commander Minho was hit twice but kept moving. Sergeant Yuna carried a wounded soldier on her back while firing one-handed. Velther ran with them, his missing arms forgotten in the adrenaline. They burst out of an airlock into space just as the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the station. Velther's last memory was tumbling through the void, watching the Korthax gate tear itself apart in fire and light. He woke up 3 days later in a medical ship. The doctors told him they had barely saved his life. His arms were gone, severed too cleanly to reattach. He would recover, but would never be the same. Commander Minho came to visit him. The human officer had burns on his face and walked with a limp. We won, Minho said simply. The station is destroyed. The swarm is cut off. The war is effectively over. How many? Velther asked. Of our team? 5 survived. Yumi, Sergeant Yuna, and 2 others. The rest died getting us to that power core. 10 soldiers dead. But the war was ending. Thousands of worlds would be saved. Millions of lives preserved. The mathematics made sense. The grief did not dot in the cold interview room. Velthor finished his testimony. That was 15 years ago. The war ended 3 months after the Korthax Gate fell. I retired from military service. Tried to go back to normal life. But there is no normal after what we experienced. The representative asked the question Velthor had been waiting for. What makes humans so dangerous? Velthor took a long breath. He had thought about this question for 15 years. He had turned it over in his mind during sleepless nights and quiet days. He had tried to understand the creatures who had changed his life and cost him his arms and given him a family he would die for. They do not fight like they are trying to win, Velthor said slowly. They fight like losing is not an option. Like the universe itself must bend to their will. Other species calculate odds and accept limitations. Humans reject limitations. They decide what must happen, and then they make it happen no matter the cost. He paused, searching for better words. They are capable of infinite kindness and terrible violence. Both come from the same source, this deep well of caring that will not accept evil or injustice. They will die for strangers. They will kill for innocence. They refuse to leave anyone behind. They treat every battle like it is personal. Are you afraid of them? The representative asked. Velthor considered the question. Yes, and I trust them completely. Both things are true. They terrify me because I have seen what they are capable of when pushed. But I trust them because I know they will always do what is right, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. The interview concluded. Velthor walked through the station corridors, his artificial arms functioning well enough, but never feeling quite right. He had one more place to visit before leaving Refuge-7. The Earth Memorial stood in the station's central plaza. It listed the names of every coalition soldier who died in the war, human and alien together. Velthor had not visited in years. Now he walked slowly along the walls, reading names. Corporal Taesoon, killed on Vexor Prime. Private Hana, died defending a medical station. Jinho, lost when his ship was destroyed. Lieutenant Day 1 fell on Krell 9. Sergeant Mial died holding a choke point so others could retreat. Kyungho killed sating civilians. Technician Bora lost in a reactor accident. Engineer Junho died in the final battle. Captain Wonshik went down with his ship. Major Hyan Wu killed by enemy fire on Haven Colony. Master Sergeant Soman died during the pursuit. Private Iziel fell at the Korthax Gate, and there, near the bottom of one wall, Commander Minho, Sergeant Yuna, Private Dong Min. All dead now, killed in battles after the war officially ended. In peacekeeping operations and anti-piracy actions, and all the small conflicts that followed the big one. Velthor stood before the memorial, his artificial hands touching the names. These humans had been his family. They had fought beside him, bled with him, saved his life, and let him save theirs. They had shown him what courage truly meant. The mankind war front had been hell.